I didn't go to the community center to meet a man. I went because my sister was tired of hearing me say, "I'm fine," when she could hear the hollow in my voice. And because my doctor had gently suggested I start moving my body again, not for weight loss, not for a number, but for my spirit. Try a class, he'd said, something with people. People. That was the part I didn't like. But on that Tuesday morning, with the sun stretching warm across my kitchen table, I stared at the flyer my sister had slipped under my purse like a sneaky blessing. Silver Steps, beginner line dancing, Tuesdays and Thursdays, 10 a.m., all ages welcome. All ages welcome sounded like a lie. I pictured a room full of energetic retirees who owned matching tracksuits and called everyone sweetie, while I tripped over my own feet and pretended I wasn't still learning how to exist after losing the person who'd been my normal. I was 62 years old, widowed for 3 years, still wearing my grief like an invisible coat I couldn't take off. But I went anyway. I told myself I was going for exercise, for health, for getting out of the house. I did not tell myself the truth, which was that I was going because I missed being seen by someone who wasn't my children checking in or a cashier asking if I needed help with my car. I missed being looked at like I was still a woman and not just a person doing okay. The community center smelled like lemon cleaner and old books, the kind of smell that makes you think of libraries and school hallways and the past, the kind of smell that says, "You're not the first person to come here to start over." At the sign-in table, a cheerful woman with gray curls and bright lipstick handed me a pen. "Name?" "Marianne," I said. "First time? Oh, honey, you'll love it. We're a good bunch. No pressure, just fun." Fun. I nodded politely, like fun was something I still did. I wrote my name on the list and glanced toward the double doors where music was already thumping softly. I could hear laughter, the confident, loud kind. I almost turned around. Almost. Then my phone buzzed, a text from my sister. "You better not be sitting in your car. Go in there. You deserve joy." I frowned at the screen like it had personally offended me. How did she always know? With a deep breath, I pushed open the doors. The room was bright and wide, with mirrored walls on one side and folding chairs lined along the other. About 20 people were scattered across the floor, mostly women, a few men. All ages welcome apparently meant mostly my age and one teenage girl who looked like she was there against her will. The instructor, a woman in her 50s with a headset microphone, waved me over. "New face, come on in. Find a spot anywhere." I stepped onto the polished floor, careful like it might crack beneath my grief. That's when I saw him. He stood near the back, not in the center with the confident dancers, not hiding on the edge either, just present, tall, broad shoulders, gray hair cut neat, a calm face that looked like it knew how to be quiet without being lonely. He wasn't smiling big. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. He was simply there, hands in his pockets, watching the instructor with the focus of someone who took directions seriously. And then, as if he felt my eyes, he looked at me. Not a quick glance, not a polite nod, a real look. His expression softened slightly, like he recognized something in me before he even knew my name. I looked away fast. My heart did something ridiculous in my chest, and I immediately hated it. "Okay, everyone," the instructor called out. "Let's start with our warm-up steps." The music kicked up, and the room shifted into motion. I tried to follow. I did, but my feet were not cooperating with my pride. Step touch, grapevine, turn. I was half a beat behind. My arms didn't know what to do. My face probably looked like I was solving a math problem in my head. I stumbled slightly during the turn and nearly bumped into the woman beside me. "Oh, sorry," she laughed. "Girl, we've all been there." I managed a small smile, then promptly messed up the next sequence. That's when a voice behind me spoke, low and amused. "You're doing better than you think." I turned my head. It was him. Up close, I noticed his eyes were warm. Not flirtatious warm, not trying to sell me something warm, just kind. "I'm definitely not," I whispered back, because I didn't want to be the new person who talked during class, but I also didn't want to ignore him. He shrugged lightly, still stepping in rhythm like he'd been born with line dancing in his bones. "You're still standing. That's a win." I huffed a quiet laugh before I could stop myself. He smiled then, just a little, like he'd earned it. The instructor called for a reset and started the sequence again, slower this time. I focused. I followed. I got the steps almost right, and every so often, I felt him behind me like a steady presence, not hovering, not crowding, just there. When the song ended, the room clapped and cheered like we just performed at an awards show. I wiped my palms on my leggings and walked toward the chairs to grab my water bottle. My cheeks were warm, not from exertion, from being around people again, from being a beginner again, from surviving a full 15 minutes without bolting. As I twisted off my water cap, I felt someone stop beside me. "Marianne, right?" I looked up. He was holding his own water bottle, and I noticed his hands were strong, hands that had worked, repaired, held things steady. "How?" "I saw you sign in," he said, then immediately looked slightly embarrassed, like he didn't want to sound like a stalker. "I'm Thomas." "Thomas," I repeated, tasting the name like it was familiar, like I'd known Thomas once in some other life. He nodded toward the dance floor. "The first day's the hardest." I took a sip of water. "I don't know about that. I think the hardest part was getting out of my car." Something flickered across his face. "Understanding." "I sat in mine for 10 minutes, he admitted. "That surprised me." "You?" He gave a small, almost sheepish smile. "I didn't want to come in either, but my doctor said the same thing you probably did. Move your body. Be around people." My mouth twisted in agreement. Doctors always think people are the answer. "Sometimes they are," he said gently. "Sometimes they're the problem, too." I laughed again. It felt weird coming out of me, like my laugh had been asleep for years and was waking up confused. Thomas looked at me like he liked the sound anyway. The instructor announced a short break. People started chatting, some walking to the snack table. Thomas nodded toward the side hallway. "You going to come back Thursday?" I hesitated. I didn't want to commit. Committing meant hope, and hope had made me reckless before. Maybe, I said. He didn't push. "If you do, I'll be here. Same spot, back row, less pressure." I glanced at him. "You always stay in the back?" He shrugged. "Front row feels like a performance. Back row feels like permission." That line hit me somewhere tender. Permission. I swallowed and looked down at my water bottle. Back row it is, then. And there it was again, his small, quiet smile. "Back row." That Thursday, I told myself I was only going because I didn't want to be a quitter, but I wore my nicer leggings and a light lip gloss, just in case the universe was paying attention. When I walked in, Thomas was already there, leaning against the wall near the back, looking like he belonged. When he saw me, his face brightened, like I'd proven something to him, or maybe to myself. "Marianne," he said, like my name mattered. "Thomas," I replied. We danced again. I messed up less. He made a couple mistakes too, on purpose, I think, just so I wouldn't feel like the only one struggling. After class, while everyone trickled out, he walked with me toward the exit. "So," he said, "what made you come?" I started to say exercise, health, routine. Instead, I told the truth. I got tired of my house being the only place that knew my name. Thomas stopped walking for a second, just long enough for the sentence to land. Then he nodded. "I understand that," he said quietly. After my divorce, my house felt loud, but not the good kind, more like echoing. Divorce, I registered for it. Not widowhood, different grief, same loneliness. We stepped outside into the crisp air. The sun was bright, but the wind had teeth. Thomas looked toward the parking lot. "Can I ask you something without making it weird?" I raised an eyebrow. "Depends." He chuckled. "Fair. Would you want to grab coffee sometime? Not like a date, just coffee. Talk. I'm new at this too." New at this. That made me soften. I should have said no. Not because I didn't want coffee, but because coffee could lead to connection, and connection could lead to disappointment. But something about him didn't feel like danger. It felt like calm. "I can do coffee," I said. "Not a date. His shoulders relaxed like he'd been holding his breath. Not a date. We agreed on Saturday morning at a little place across town called Honey and Grain. It had a reputation for good biscuits and soft jazz. When I got home, I stood in my kitchen and stared at my sink, like it might explain what I'd just done. I, Marianne Carter, had just agreed to meet a man for coffee. At 62, neither of us are looking for love. And yet, I felt something small and bright in my chest, like a candle being lit in a room I thought would stay dark forever. Saturday morning, I tried on 3 different sweaters and got mad at myself for caring. Then I settled on a soft cream cardigan, earrings my daughter gave me last Christmas, and a necklace I hadn't worn in years because it was a gift from my husband. I hesitated with the clasp in my fingers. Then I put it on anyway, because my husband loved me, and love wasn't something I needed to hide like a secret. At Honey and Grain, the smell of cinnamon and fresh coffee hit me as soon as I walked in. The place was cozy, full of wood tables and warm lighting. Thomas was already there, sitting by the window, hands folded in front of him like he'd been raised to be respectful. He stood when he saw me. "I wasn't sure if I should stand," he said, half joking. "You did," I said, and surprised myself by smiling. He pulled out my chair like a gentleman, and I sat down, feeling a little like I was playing a role I hadn't rehearsed in years. We ordered coffee. He insisted on paying. I protested. We compromised by agreeing I'd pay next time. Next time. That phrase slipped out like it belonged. We talked about normal things at first, where we lived, how long we'd been in town. He told me he worked for the city for 35 years, maintenance and planning, and retired early when his mother got sick. Caregiving changes you, he said. It teaches you what matters. I nodded slowly. It does. Then, as if we both sensed the deeper story under our polite conversation, he asked gently, "How long have you been on your own?" There it was, the question. I stared into my coffee like it held answers. 3 years, I said. Cancer. Thomas's jaw tightened slightly, like he felt the weight of the word. I'm sorry, he said, and I could tell he meant it. Not the casual sorry people toss out like a tissue. I swallowed. It was hard, and it still is. Some days I feel like I'm doing great, and then I see his favorite cereal at the store, and I'm back at day one. Thomas nodded. Grief doesn't follow rules. No, I whispered, it doesn't. He took a breath. I didn't lose my wife to death, but I lost my marriage to years. Years of not talking right. Years of thinking love would take care of itself. He looked at his hands. Then one day, it was just over. I didn't know what to say to that, so I said the simplest thing. That's still a loss. His eyes met mine. Something passed between us. Recognition, respect, understanding. He smiled a little, but it didn't reach his eyes yet. Yeah, it is. We sat in a quiet moment, not awkward, just real. Then he cleared his throat lightly. Can I tell you something? Okay. I wasn't looking for love, he said, voice steady. I was looking for peace. I wanted to finish my life without drama, without proving anything. I thought, maybe love is for younger folks with energy. I let out a small laugh. Energy is the main thing I'm lacking. He chuckled. Exactly. But then I saw you walk into that dance class like you were trying to be brave, while your whole body wanted to run. I froze. He continued, gentler now. And I thought, that's what courage looks like. Quiet, unannounced, still showing up. My throat tightened unexpectedly. No one had called me courageous in years. I blinked fast. Well, I almost didn't come back. I'm glad you did, he said, simply. For a second, I could hear my sister's voice in my head. You deserve joy. And I realized something. Maybe joy wasn't always fireworks. Maybe joy was coffee by a window with a man who didn't demand I be healed, only present. When we left the cafe, Thomas walked me to my car. The wind had softened. The sun felt warmer. Same time next week, he asked, carefully. I heard the question underneath his words. Do I get to see you again? I nodded. Same time. He smiled. This time it reached his eyes. Good, he said. I'll bring a story. A story? He opened my car door for me, then leaned slightly on the frame. I have a feeling you've got a few too. I paused, hand on the steering wheel. I do, I admitted, but they're not all pretty. Thomas's voice was calm. Mine aren't either. I looked at him, really looked at him, and felt something settle inside me. Not a rush, not a spark, a steady warmth, like a fire that could last. Over the next few weeks, we became a routine. Line dancing on Tuesdays and Thursdays, coffee on Saturdays, phone calls that started short and somehow ended up lasting an hour. We didn't call it dating. We didn't call it anything. But one day, my daughter called while Thomas was in my kitchen helping me fix a stubborn cabinet hinge. "Yes, I'm at Mama's," I heard her say to someone on her end. "She's got company." Company. I looked at Thomas and he raised an eyebrow like he heard it too. When I hung up, I tried to laugh it off. "They think I've got a man friend." "A man friend," Thomas repeated, amused. "That's what the kids call it now?" "Apparently," I said. He wiped his hands on a towel and leaned back against the counter. "Are they wrong?" The question hung in the air like a soft challenge. My heart beat too loud. I opened my mouth to say something safe. Then I remembered how tired I was of safe. "I don't know," I said honestly. "I just know I feel lighter when you're around." Thomas's expression softened. "Me too," he said. He didn't reach for my hand. He didn't move closer. He simply stood there, letting the moment breathe. And somehow that was more intimate than any grand gesture. The first time he held my hand, it wasn't dramatic. It was after dance class when we were walking out and the parking lot was crowded with people. A car backed out too fast and Thomas instinctively reached for me, fingers wrapping around mine, pulling me gently closer to his side. His hand was warm, steady. I looked down at our hands like they belonged to someone else. Then I looked up at him. Thomas didn't say anything. He just kept walking, still holding on like it was natural. My chest tightened in the strangest way. I felt guilty for a split second, like I was betraying my husband's memory. But then I remembered something my grief counselor once told me. Love doesn't replace. Love expands. I squeezed Thomas's hand back, and when he glanced at me, his smile was quiet but full. That night, I stood in my bathroom brushing my teeth, and I caught my reflection in the mirror. I looked different, not younger, not magically healed, but softer, brighter, like someone had turned the lights back on inside me. I climbed into bed and stared at the ceiling, thinking of Thomas's hand, his voice, his patience. Then my mind wandered to the future, something I hadn't done in years without fear. A trip maybe, a holiday, a new tradition, a love that didn't ask me to be 20 again, a love that met me exactly where I was. My phone buzzed, a text from Thomas. "I'm glad you showed up." I stared at the words and tears sprang up. Happy ones, the kind that confuse you because you forgot they existed. I typed back, "Me too." Then, after a pause, I added, "Neither of us was looking." He replied almost immediately. That's the funny thing about the best gifts. They show up when your hands are finally open. I set the phone on my chest and let myself breathe. Outside, the night was quiet. Inside, for the first time in a long time, so was my heart. Not empty, quiet, peaceful quiet. And somewhere in that peace, love was growing. Slow, steady, real. At 62, neither of us looking, and yet somehow found.